and welcome. You're watching a World Panorama where you get a complete perspective on all the big international news stories that unfolded this week. I'm Aishwarya Kapoor with you. Here is a look at the headlines first. Iran shoots down a US surveillance drone saying it was over their territory. US claims plane was over international waters. President Donald Trump approves military strikes against Iran before calling them off. US calls UNSC meet over the issue. Chinese President Xi Jinping meets North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang. First visit by any Chinese leader to North Korea in 14 years as President Xi prepares to hold talks with Donald Trump on trade war at the G20 summit in Japan next week. Donald Trump launches a re-election campaign, presents himself as an outsider, a victim. Early polls place Donald Trump behind some potential Democratic challengers. And protests in Hong Kong over China extradition bill fail to die down. Thousands surround police headquarters, call for the bill that has been suspended to be scrapped. The top story this week, Iran shot down a US military drone on Thursday, further escalating the already volatile situation playing out between Washington and Tehran in the Middle East. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said that it had shot down an intruding American spy drone after it entered into the country's territory on Thursday, saying that it had sent a strong warning to the United States. The US says that its drone was in international airspace over the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most vital shipping routes. Now, US President Donald Trump approved military strikes against Iran in retaliation for downing the plane, but pulled back from launching them on Thursday night after a day of escalating tensions. Now, Trump said that he called off the retaliatory strike on Iranian targets that would have killed 150 people, calling it a disproportionate response to the downing of the American drone. Tensions between Iran and US have risen again. Iran claimed on Wednesday that it shot down a US drone in Iranian airspace. Iran says the US drone RQ-4 Global Hawk entered Iranian airspace in the southern Hormuzgan province. However, US military denied any US aircraft were operating in Iranian airspace at the time of the claimed attack.
Iran made a big mistake. This drone was in international waters. Clearly, we have it all documented. It's documented scientifically, not just words. And they made a very bad mistake.
Obviously, the facts need to be established. I know there are various parties are looking into the issue right now. At this point, I think we would call on everyone to avoid any further escalation.
Could I ask another?
Tensions in the Gulf have been heightened since 13th of June, when the US accused Iran of attacking 2 tankers in the Gulf of Oman with mines. The US military also released footage, it said, showed the Iranian military removing an unexploded mine from the side of one of the tankers. Saudi Arabia, Iran's arch-rival, blamed Tehran for the attack. Iran denied any involvement in the attack, as well as a similar attack on 12th of May off the coast of the UAE. But US stuck to its stand that it was Tehran's work, and Pentagon said it was deploying 1,000 extra troops to the region amid tension.
What I can tell you is that the limpet mine that was used in the attack is distinguishable, and it is also strikingly bearing a resemblance to Iranian mines that have already been publicly displayed in Iranian military parades. This type of attack is a threat to international freedom of navigation in international waters, as well as freedom of commerce.
This week, US State Department's point man on Iran, Brian Hook, also traveled to the Middle East for meetings in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Kuwait and Bahrain to discuss what the State Department called was Iran's regional aggression. Before that, Brian Hook faced several testy exchanges with the Democrats in the House of Representatives over how the Trump administration viewed its powers to declare war. Hook stressed that the administration is pursuing diplomacy with Iran.
We are not looking for military action. We have kept our foreign policy squarely in the guardrails of economic pressure and diplomatic isolation.
US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also on Tuesday met with EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs Federica Mogherini to seek European support for US economic sanctions against Iran. The developments come in the backdrop of heightened tensions between US and Iran following President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from Tehran's nuclear deal with world powers a year ago. After the withdrawal, Iran recently quadrupled its production of low-enriched uranium and threatened to boost its enrichment closer to the weapons-grade levels, trying to pressure Europe for new terms to the 2015 deal. All this has raised fears that a miscalculation or further rise in tensions could push the US and Iran into an open conflict, some 40 years after Tehran's Islamic Revolution. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Kim Jong-un has hailed North Korea's invincible ties with China during a state visit by President Xi Jinping. Beijing is Pyongyang's closest ally, but their relationship has been strained by North Korea's nuclear program and China's support of UN sanctions. Now, Xi's two-day visit to Pyongyang ended on Friday, a week before he meets US President Donald Trump at the G20 summit. He and Kim are currently in separate disputes with the United States, China over trade, and North Korea over nuclear weapons. Chinese President Xi Jinping arriving in Pyongyang on Thursday for a state visit to North Korea. Xi's two-day visit was the first by any Chinese leader to North Korea in 14 years and since taking power in 2012. The visit also coming as the two neighboring countries are celebrating the 70th anniversary of their diplomatic ties. Thousands of people lined the streets to welcome the Chinese president to the country on Thursday morning. Xi became the first foreign leader to be honored with a salute at the highly symbolic square of the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun in Pyongyang on Thursday. The visit assumes even more importance as both leaders are currently in separate disputes with the United States, China over trade, and North Korea over nuclear weapons. Xi's visit comes a week before the G20 summit in Japan, where he is set to meet US President Donald Trump. It is Xi's first meeting with Kim since the Trump-Kim summit in Hanoi in February ended without any agreement on North Korean denuclearization. Xi and Kim agreed to jointly create a bright future of bilateral ties. Xi also praised Pyongyang's efforts towards denuclearization and said he hoped that North Korea and the US could keep talking and make progress.
China and North Korea have jointly drawn a plan for a bright future of bilateral ties and reached a streak of major consensus at my fruitful meeting with Kim Jong-un.
During the visit, Xi also expressed a willingness to meet President Donald Trump during the G20 summit in Japan next week.
President Xi Jinping will meet Trump and exchange opinions over fundamental problems in the development of China-US relationship. The trade teams from both sides will seriously implement the important instructions from the both leaders to prepare for the meeting between the two leaders during the Osaka G20 summit.
Meanwhile, ahead of meeting Trump, Xi's visit to North Korea is significant. China's main goal is stability in North Korea and economic cooperation, and ensuring that it remains a significant party in the negotiations over North Korea's nuclear program. For the North Korean side, Xi's visit enables Kim to show that he still has China's support as other relationships are struggling. North Korea's economy is struggling under the international sanctions regime put in place because of its repeated nuclear and missile tests. China, its biggest trading partner, has backed those sanctions, but has indicated that it would be in favor of some sanctions relief as an incentive for North Korea to denuclearize. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. US President Donald Trump has formally launched his re-election campaign, urging supporters to keep this team in place for 4 more years. The Republican president made his case before thousands of supporters at a rally in Florida, calling the state "my second home." Trump used the announcement to lash out at Democrats, accusing them of trying to rip your country apart. However, early polls placed Donald Trump behind some potential Democratic challengers.
This is a movement like we've never seen in the history of our country.
We support President Trump.
This is epic.
Donald Trump is our president!
US President Donald Trump launched his 2020 re-election campaign on Tuesday at a rally in Florida, whipping up a crowd of at least 20,000 with a nationalist boast about the US economy being the envy of the world. And he painted a disturbing picture of what life would look like if he loses in 2020, accusing his critics of un-American conduct and telling the crowd that Democrats want to destroy you.
Our economy is the envy of the world, perhaps the greatest economy we've had in the history of our country. And as long as you keep this team in place, we have a tremendous way to go. Our future has never, ever looked brighter or sharper.
Addressing a crowd, Donald Trump complained that he had been under assault from the very first day of his presidency by a fake news media, an illegal witch hunt that had tried to keep him and his supporters down. He entered the stage with his wife Melania, who said she was excited to be First Lady for 6 more years. Senior figures from the White House, including Vice President Mike Pence and outgoing Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, also spoke at the rally. Democratic contender Bernie Sanders responded to the campaign launch by saying that Trump was living in a parallel universe.
We have a president who is a racist, who is a sexist, who is a homophobe, who is a xenophobe, and he is a religious bigot. And his strategy to win re-election is to divide the American people up based on the color of our skin, based on where we were born, based on our religion, based on our sexual orientation. And our job is not to allow him to do that.
Florida will be one of the key swing states in 2020 if Trump is to defeat the nominee chosen from a field of 23 Democratic hopefuls. During his roughly 80-minute speech, Donald Trump reiterated key themes of his winning 2016 campaign: illegal immigration, decorating the news media, and boosting jobs.
Yes, we are doing things that few others have even tried to do. We are making progress like nobody would believe. Wait till you see some of the things that you're going to be hearing about over the next 2 months. We believe our country should be a sanctuary for law-abiding citizens, not for criminal aliens.
Early polls have placed Donald Trump behind some potential Democratic challengers. But Trump goes into the re-election fight buoyed by soaring GDP, low unemployment, and confidence in the fierce loyalty of his right-wing base. Early polls have limited value, and in 2016, they famously failed to predict Trump's defeat of Democrat Hillary Clinton. If anything, the surveys point to another bitterly fought tight race. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And here is a look at some more international news stories in Global Buzz. Former Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi was buried hours after he collapsed in a court and died on Monday. The former leader was buried in eastern Cairo early on Tuesday morning with his family present. Morsi, who was 67, had been in custody since his removal from office in 2013. Human rights groups who had criticized the conditions in which he was kept have called for an impartial investigation into his death. A top figure in the now banned Islamist movement, the Muslim Brotherhood, Morsi became the country's first democratically elected leader in 2012. He was ousted and detained in a military coup a year later, following mass protests against his rule. A New Zealand man who shared a live stream video of the Christchurch mosque attacks has been jailed for 21 months. Philip Arps sent the video to 30 people and to a friend, asking for it to be modified to include a kill count. Christchurch District Judge Stephen O'Driscoll said that Arps held unrepentant views towards the Muslim community. A gunman killed 51 people in the attack on Muslims at a mosque and Islamic center during Friday prayers in March. Judge condemned Arps's action, calling them a hate crime. He added that it was particularly cruel of Arps to share the video in the days after the attacks. For the first time since Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 was shot down in July 2014, prosecutors have announced charges against suspects in the case. 3 Russians and a Ukrainian have been charged with bringing a missile into the area in eastern Ukraine and with murdering 298 passengers and crew. The passenger flight was en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it was shot down over conflict hit Ukraine. Russia said that the accusations against its military were absolutely threadbare. International arrest warrants have been issued for the 4 suspects, and a court case will begin in the Netherlands on 9th of March 2020. And a special UN investigator says Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman should be investigated in the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi because there is credible evidence that he and other senior officials in the kingdom were responsible. Agnes Calamard, the special rapporteur for the UN's Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, conducted a 5-month investigation into Khashoggi's death last fall at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Her resulting report released on Wednesday found that Khashoggi has been a victim of a deliberate, premeditated execution and extrajudicial killing for which the state of Saudi Arabia is responsible under international human rights law. Saudi agents killed the journalist inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. However, Saudi authorities insist that they were not acting on Prince Mohammed's orders. News from Hong Kong now, where protests over China extradition bill have failed to die down. Thousands of people on Friday surrounded police headquarters, calling for the bill to be scrapped. Millions of people have marched against the bill in recent weeks, with the clashes also breaking out with the police. The bill, which allows extradition to mainland China, has already been suspended. Now, critics say that it would erode the judicial independence of Hong Kong. Hong Kong has been a part of China since 1997 under the one country, two systems principle, which allows it freedoms not seen in the mainland China. Traffic back on Hong Kong roads, people going back to work. But the streets are witness to the simmering anger against the mainland China government. The half-torn posters of the recent protest bearing testimony to the vociferous public reaction to what people of Hong Kong consider to be a crackdown on the city's sovereignty. The protest against China extradition bill was probably the largest political protest ever staged in Hong Kong. It may have been the biggest in China's history. Organizers reckon that about 1.9 million people joined the demonstration on 16th of June. The force of the protest was enough to force Chief Executive Carrie Lam to suspend the bill indefinitely. But protesters say they would not give up their cause.
Million protesters and 2 million protesters. But that being said, the government has shown no signs of remedy or any apologies. So we would launch a more rationalized and uncooperative actions against the government. And we want to let everyone know that the Hong Kongers have not given up yet.
What the bill does is open more integration between Hong Kong's independent judicial system with China's legal system, which has a poor reputation as an arm of the Communist Party. Critics said the law undermined Hong Kong's rule of law, guaranteed by one country, two systems formula, under which the former British colony returned to the Chinese rule in 1997. Economics has also played a role in differences with the Chinese mainland. In the past, Hong Kong was rich and the Chinese mainland was poor. However, Hong Kong now finds itself in stiff competition with many Chinese cities that boast of greater resources, a wealth of talent and powerful ambitions. Hong Kong's aging infrastructure and often poorly maintained properties look antiquated compared with the massive and shining development across the border. Societal and cultural differences also have added to the gap.
For Hong Kong, we must seize new historical opportunities. We will more actively integrate ourselves into overall situation of China's development, take a deeper part in China's reform and opening up.
The present crisis has shown how disillusioned Hong Kongers have become. In 2003, hundreds of thousands of people had taken to the streets in protest against a proposed anti-sedition law, forcing China to shelve the bill. During the Umbrella Movement in 2014, protesters staged weeks of sit-in to press for free and fair elections to the post of chief executive. However, China's leaders dug in their heels, making it plain that the universal suffrage Hong Kong had been promised would mean only the chance to vote for someone that China likes. Hong Kongers see their leader Carrie Lam as China's Communist Party's stooge, as they will see her successor too. That is why Hong Kongers are disillusioned, and the yawning gap between Beijing and Hong Kong looks to widen in the years to come. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. A blackout stripped all of the mainland Argentina and Uruguay of power early on Sunday, affecting tens of millions of people in the electric failure that officials called as unprecedented in its scope. Parts of Chile and Brazil were also affected. The Argentinian energy company said that the power failure started between two power stations that ultimately forced the shutdown that affected the entire grid. But it is still unclear what caused that transmission disruption. The cause remains under investigation. Tens of millions of people left reeling in the dark in Argentina after a massive electrical failure. The power cut occurred shortly after 7 a.m. on Sunday, causing trains to be halted and failures with traffic signaling. Public transportation was halted, shops closed, and patients dependent on home medical equipment were urged to go to hospitals with generators. In some cities, the water system also halted, as did most gasoline stations, phones and internet. The outage occurred as people in Argentina were preparing to go to the polls for local elections, delaying voting in several regional provinces. Power had largely been restored by Sunday night.
We were just with my 84-year-old grandmother, and we had to help her down with the stairs because the elevator wasn't working. Everything is closed, and there is no movement in the street. But oh well, you have to keep going. Parts of Paraguay and Chile were also affected. The blackout was prompted by a failure in an electrical grid that serves both Argentina and Uruguay. As of now, no explanation for the widespread power failure has been identified. Argentina's energy minister insisted that the country's electrical system was very robust, but added that the exact cause of this failure was unclear. Argentine government has not ruled out any possibilities, including a cyber attack. Argentina's president called the power outage unprecedented and announced an official investigation into the cause.
A failure occurred in the coastal grid. failures that occur with frequency in the Argentine system as well as any other country's system. That failure is not abnormal or extraordinary. What is abnormal or extraordinary and shouldn't happen is the following chain of events that cause the total cutoff.
Anormal o extraordinario.
The blackout comes as concerns rise over government's abilities to disrupt other nations' power systems. The president of Uruguay's government-owned utility UTE has said that the power failure was an opportunity to improve the country's power systems.
This instance is going to be an opportunity because it placed our entire system at the same time in a situation that will definitely allow us to draw conclusion from. We are going to improve something based on what we learn in the coming days.
Argentina's power grid is generally known for being in a state of despair, with substations and cables that were insufficiently upgraded as power rates remained largely frozen for years. The outage has put renewed focus on Argentina's economic struggles. Argentine President Mauricio Macri, a center-right politician first elected in 2015, is facing a tough re-election battle in October 2019. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, that is it in today's episode of the program. But before we go, here is a grim reminder of what we have done to our Mother Earth. An emaciated polar bear has been sighted in a Russian industrial city in Siberia, far south of its normal hunting grounds. The female bear, visibly weak and seemingly ill, lay despondently on the ground for hours on Tuesday in Norilsk's suburbs, its feet caked in mud, occasionally rising to sniff around for food. It is the first polar bear seen in the city in more than 40 years. Climate change has been damaging polar bears' sea ice habitats and forced them to scavenge more for food on land, bringing them into contact with people and inhabited areas. So take a look at these visuals as I take your leave. Bye-bye.